Hello, everyone, and welcome to our March desktop time. We're going to give people a few minutes to keep arriving, which they're starting to do now. Actually, we'll give it just another minute or so people can show up, because we do have a very special guest to start us off, and we don't want him to start too soon and miss out on these folks that want to hear about scaling this year. So anyways, welcome to our March desktop time. If we're here last month or previous months, you've been reading our posts, you know that we are very privileged today to have Ingrid Edstrom and also Mike Milan here with us. And they're going to be talking about fraud prevention in the workplace. And so I'm very excited to hear what they have to share with us. But we also have Joe Woodard here with us just to tell us a little bit about the venue for Scaling New Heights this year and also a little bit about the event. And just let us know what we have to look forward to in a few months from now. So, Joe, I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to you and welcome you and thank you again for joining us, and thank you for providing the update about scaling. So, the floor is yours.
Well, Chris, I appreciate you inviting me on. You know, with the announcement of our venue yesterday, you reached out to me to say, you know, can you tell folks what's going on and how things feel like they're back on the rails with scaling. And I'll just be the first to tell you, we had a venue crisis. You know, things were not exactly on the rails here. And but we were able to solve that. We're now at the Georgia World Congress Center, and we have room blocks at the Connected Omni Hotel, which when we announced that sold out in under an hour. And then we have room blocks that are opening up later today at the Westin and the Hilton. And between those three blocks, we're confident we can take care of all the folks. So I've just, the theme this year is Tame the Machines. We have Steve Forbes coming to talk about the impact of disruptive technologies, what people are calling the fourth industrial revolution, on the professions. And we were insulated from the other three industrial revolutions. Those affected mostly the labor jobs, and the first one affected agricultural jobs. In other words, the horses and the beasts of burden were affected by the first industrial revolution, but not many people. And then labor forces were affected by the second and the third. This is the first industrial revolution that will affect the professionals, because for the first time in history, we have thinking machines, or what IBM calls cognitive machines. So we're going to be talking about that impact, and we're not going to be talking about it just in the sense of gloom and doom, the sky is falling, how can you protect your head? What we're talking about is how do you turn the disruption into a positive disruption? How do you leverage those machines? And then how do you transcend those machines? You leverage them by creating extreme efficiencies and profits and also increased effectiveness. And you transcend them by doing what Daniel Susskind challenges in his book, Future of the Professions, by doing what the machines cannot do or what they ought not do. And that then leads us to what Ron Baker calls relationship work. He challenges accountants to not walk away from service work. People still need their tax returns done and their books kept, but to add to service work, knowledge work, and then relationship work. And as of now, knowledge work is insulated from the machines. Service work is not. Process automation tools are already displacing the manual labor we do with bookkeeping and tax preparation and even some degree audit, and more is coming with audit. So service is going to be displaced quickly, but not knowledge work. We have an insulation window there before the machines reach parity with human thought, which Kurzweil is predicting will happen about 2029. But don't get complacent, because with Moore's law and exponential growth of computing power, that could be 2025, 2023. But regardless of when it is, to prepare for the future, we embrace knowledge work, and then we're going to accept Ron Baker's challenge to embrace relationship work. Now, Finagraph's on the call today, and they are a fantastic tool if you want to get into the knowledge work business. Mike, I'm not saying that just because you're here. I mentioned you when you're not here. Financial analytics is a key part of knowledge work. So embrace these guys. I know Mike's going to tell you a lot more about that. But relationship work is something that Mike can't help you with, not something Chris can't help you with. It's something that Ingrid exemplifies in her practice, but she can't actually do for you. Relationship work is about you forging meaningful human relationships with your clients, where you transcend the work, you even transcend the value you bring, and you connect to them at the human level. So the profession to look at, whatever your religious inclinations are, it's not about theology. It's the profession that does this best is the religious profession. they know how to transcend their genre, if you will, and touch people at the human level, whether it's comforting them at a funeral or performing a wedding. Well, in your case, it could be comforting a client who's just served an audit notice or a notice of levy or intent to levy or a lien, or somebody that's going through a very difficult time like we are here at Woodard right now, where we had to restructure our debt to a Chapter 11. A lot of people know that. My relationship worker has been my CPA. He has wept with me. He has figuratively held my hand through this thing. And that's something that a computer, however intelligent, can never do. So if service work evolves to knowledge work, evolves to relationship work, we're going to be talking about all of that coming up in June as a response to the coming technological disruption.
Okay, fantastic. Well, that's a very deep description too. I hadn't really thought that deeply before, and so thank you for sharing that, Joe. And I think all of us really have to be aware of that, because I think sometimes we do tend to depersonalize our interaction with our clients when we are too tech-centric, but that combination, as you've described, I think is very significant and important. So very much looking forward to scaling, and thank you, Joe, also for taking the time to join us and share with us about scaling. And again, folks, if you haven't blocked your room, they're going to have the second and third hotels available, as Joe mentioned. If you haven't registered yet, do it now. I mean, it's a beautiful facility they're having it at, and it's actually larger, isn't it, Joe, than the original plan, I believe?
It is. Yep.
Yeah, so it's going to be a fantastic show. If you haven't registered yet, you can find the links, of course, on Woodard's site. We'll also have it as well on the Desktop Time site. So make sure you sign up. Thank you so much again, Joe. I know you're very busy these days, and look forward to a great conference and moving forward with exciting things. So thanks again.
Looking forward to you guys being there. All right.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. All right. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
Okay. So as we say goodbye to Joe and really appreciate him joining us, I'm going to kind of move back to our normal Desktop Time process, and I think people are still checking in. Although it's tax season, I know a lot more people have been watching on the recorded side than joining us, but hopefully our numbers will keep going here. So anyways, we're extremely happy to have Ingrid and Mike with us today, and kind of a different format than what we've done in the past, but as usual, I would like to just welcome you here again to remind you that we are sponsored by QBox, which if you are someone that prefers to use desktop, we'd love you to check it out and see if it might work for you sharing your file with other folks. But I'm also going to go ahead and read the bios for Ingrid and Mike, which is always an adventure because I actually read what they sent me. I don't make things up, but sometimes I watch their face. It's like, oh, wow, did I really say that? So, but these are very impressive bios. So I'm going to read through them for Ingrid. She's the priestess of profits at the award-winning bookkeeping firm Polymath LLC. She's been recognized as one of the accounting profession's top 40 under 40 most powerful women in accounting and the 2017 top up-and-comer pro advisor. She's a certified FICB, which stands for Fellow Member Institute for Certified Bookkeepers, and she's been instrumental in establishing the ICB in the United States, including launching their new webinar series. Ingrid's the creator of the AskABookkeeper.com online education series, a member of the Intuit Trainer Writer Network, and leader of the Southern Oregon Woodard Group. When Ingrid's not teaching or playing her favorite video game, QuickBooks, she's usually playing Irish music or frolicking with the goats, which we talked about a little bit ago. And Mike, also Milan's here to join us, and he's Finagraph's Vice President, customer success with over 20 years of sales and entrepreneurship experience. He teaches at the most prestigious graduate schools of banking in America and is a sought-after speaker on the topics of small business. He's translated innovative ideas into multi-million-dollar businesses. Prior to joining Finagraph, Mike built several successful ventures from the ground up. He built and sold Blazing Star Staffing, a Midwest regional hotel staffing company, and Bottoms Up Brew House. He also owned 2 service businesses in the St. Louis area. And he's also a former Missouri State Trooper and earned his MBA from Baylor University, which is where my uncle is retired from, by the way. I didn't tell you that.
Hey, I go Slickum Bears. That's
right. They had a rough time in the tournament, though. So, but anyways, welcome you guys both here, and I am going to go ahead and turn the floor over to you. I know we're going to talk about fraud prevention. We're also going to see a demonstration of flight. So with that, I'll start with turning it over to Ingrid, and you can take it away.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Chris. I am really excited to be here today with you and Mike and Allison. And Joe, that was a lot of fun. I'm nerding out over all the things Joe was talking about. I'm extremely excited for Scaling New Heights. And I'm actually thinking about all the ways that what we're talking about today are going to stem in with some of what Joe was talking about in the relationship side of accounting. So I know that most of the people on this call today are probably accounting professionals, though we might have some small business owners out there today too, especially since I posted the link for this webinar in the Ask a Bookkeeper Facebook group. And I'm hoping to get some small business owners who might be interested in this topic and learning about how to prevent fraud in their businesses as well, and how they can use their accounting professionals to create better controls within their businesses. So whether you're an accounting pro or a business owner, this is going to be a great topic. March is International Fraud Prevention Month, so this is the time to be talking about these things, and it's a great opportunity to bring some of these ideas up with our clients. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get a PowerPoint started. PowerPoint is really quick for the most part. I just wanted to make sure that we had something for the more visual learners in our group today. I know that just watching a talking head talk, you might as well be, listening to a podcast rather than being on a webinar. So I like to create something a little bit more visually interactive for people. So yeah, we're going to be talking about fraud prevention and what every business owner really needs to know about not getting ripped off on a daily basis by people that you trust, because that's a sad thing. These are the main things we're going to be covering just in the next, handful of minutes, essentially. And we're going to be going over them pretty quickly because I want to get back to the conversation with Mike and Chris about some of these ideas, because that's where the real fun is in the stories, hearing about real situations where fraud has occurred or maybe was prevented. That's where we can really learn with each other how to prevent these things in our businesses and develop internal controls and keep our eyes open. So before we dive in, just a little bit about me. Chris did a great job introducing me, but I want to tell you a bit more about Polymath, our business. Like he said, I am the priestess of profits at Polymath LLC, spreading the gospel of healthy business. Our vision at Polymath is to make the world a better place, built on a foundation of thriving small businesses. And what that means to us is that we want more people in the world making good money, doing what they love. Because that way we will be surrounded by happier, healthier people, and that's the world that I want to live in. That's not something that we here at Polymath can do all by ourselves. We need you. We need business owners to be pursuing education. We need accounting professionals to be educating and assisting more business owners. We can't help every small business in the world all by ourselves. So we're also known as the Crazy Bookkeepers with the Puppets. We have a puppet show at askabookkeeper.com that you can learn about. We're working to create for small business something like what Bill Nye does for science, making the big intimidating ideas more accessible and fun. So you can learn about that there. So diving into fraud prevention, if we're going to pinpoint the people who might commit fraud in small businesses, what do those people look like? Well, raise your hand, every one of you, because it can look like anybody. Thanks, Mike. Here we go. It's hard to do the raise your hand thing on a webinar when we can't actually see the participants. But think about, do you occasionally, once in a while, drive 5 miles over the speed limit? Once in a while? Most of us do. So when I'm teaching this class live, which I've done several times now, it's something where everyone in the room raises their hands. And I say, well, keep your hands up if you occasionally drive, 40 miles over the speed limit. And just about everyone except for 1 or 2 clowns puts their hands down. Last time I went through this presentation, there was actually, it was at a fraud prevention event, and we had local police officers in the room. And I was like, it's okay, the officers aren't going to pull you over in the middle of our class. What's the difference between driving 5 miles over the speed limit versus 40 miles over the speed limit? It's both legal, right? It's illegal to drive 5 or 40. But the difference is that it's socially acceptable to drive 5 miles over the speed limit. No one's going to get pulled over for just going a little fast, right? But if you drive 40 miles over the speed limit, you're going to get caught and there's going to be consequences. And the same is true in our small businesses. Many workplaces create socially permissive environments where it's okay to take a couple pens and maybe a pad of Post-it notes, or, round up your time on the time card to the nearest 5 minutes or 15. And employers will often avoid confrontation over the little things because they want to maintain a positive, trusting work environment and a rapport with their employees. As a result, what was that, Mike?
No, I'm just saying, you were talking right up my alley, and I'm sorry to jump in, but
go for it.
Again, 7 years as a state trooper, I mean, all the stuff that you're talking about, I mean, I lived, right? 5 mile an hour, 5 mile an hour over. Matter of fact, every networking event I went to, people would ask me, Mike, how fast can I drive? Right? So there is that permissiveness that happens, at 5 mile an hour, 9 mile an hour. I used to tell people, says you can drive as fast as you can afford. And it's the same thing with fraud. I mean, you can take as much as you can, spend in jail or pay the fines. I guess you can do that.
Well, you can only do it many times as it takes before they put you away.
That's right.
Well, and in business, the result of that kind of environment where it's permissive or people just try to get away with it or don't get fired when they get caught, not having clear boundaries and enforcements creates an opportunity for members of our teams to take advantage. And on this slide, you can see what we call the fraud triangle. The fraud triangle shows us that in order for fraud to take place, you need to have all three of these factors in place: motivation, rationalization, and opportunity. Now, each person's motivations and ability to rationalize their behavior to themselves is their own deal. The opportunity is where we can make a difference in our small businesses. If there isn't an opportunity to steal and get away with it, then it's not going to happen. Ta-da! And the best place to begin is by having a clear zero tolerance policy. And we're going to get into that in just a minute. So these are a few examples of fraud cases that have taken place in the local news in my area here in Southern Oregon. And in each of these cases, the business owners trusted these team members like family. In some of the cases, the fraudsters were family, actually family. And in every single one of these cases, the situation could have been prevented with just a bit of oversight. And that's what we're going to work on establishing in our conversation today. So let's start with just defining quick, simple terms. What is fraud? The dictionary defines fraud as wrongful or criminal deception intended to result in financial or personal gain. To put that into easier terms than even that, when you take something that isn't yours without asking, that's stealing, right? Fraud is stealing. But it's not always just pocketing money or physical goods. What were you going to say, Mike?
No, I said that's exactly right. I mean, and it happens all the time. You mentioned it, just taking pins, just taking Post-it notes. I mean, that's the same as stealing, even if you think it's okay.
Yep. So these are the most common types of fraud. The top three are corruption and billing schemes and non-cash thefts. So the places where things happen the most. Over a third of internal fraud cases are due to corruption, where the fraudster uses their influence within the business to violate their duty to the business for personal gain. And this can include things like conflict of interest, such as a nonprofit board member using charitable funds to purchase goods or services from their own personal business. It might also include bribery, illegal gratuities, extortion. There's a lot of different types of corruption. Almost a quarter of internal fraud cases are due to billing schemes. And this generally involves false invoicing, either going through a fictitious company or using the name of a legitimate vendor. The bills and the bill payments get entered into the books, but the checks are either being written to the employee or to a company that that person owns. Now, Mike, in our call earlier this month, I had Mike on the Ask the Bookkeeper Facebook Live with Penny the Practical Professional, our puppet. You told a great story about a billing scheme that you witnessed. Do you want to share that with us?
You gotta remind me.
It was a case of a false vendor. You were talking about somebody who...
Oh, yeah. Basically, what was happening, and that's why first of all, it all starts with data, right? I mean, the reason I'm involved with your call, I think, is because what we do is we try to find those anomalies. So, I mean, it's building false vendors, it's building false customers. It could be, in that case, what we found was a person had created a company, a vendor, and was actually writing checks to themselves in the form of a vendor payment. In our case, it was a janitorial company where it was inventory that was coming out. Although we never received the inventory, we were paying somebody to pay it. So, I got ripped off two different ways. One was the very fact that we didn't receive the inventory. The second is that money went out the door. And one of the ways we were able to catch that is just the data was incomplete. So when you talk about controls and you talk about, and I know you're going to get into that more, but sometimes just missing pieces of data will leave a breadcrumb to what's actually happening. Another thing, billing schemes, I own 3-bar restaurants, and it was commonplace at the beginning of our management takeover that the bartender or waitress would just give their friends a drink or 5 drinks or not pay anything on their bill. That's the same thing as a billing scheme, whereas the company is losing goods and not being paid for it, not being compensated. It's the same thing.
Yeah, and that actually stems right into the next one, which is non-cash theft. So this can include stealing inventory, such as drinks, and giving them to your friends, or other tangible assets for personal use to sell or for profit. And sometimes even having products shipped directly to a home address. And unexplained entries in our QuickBooks, on altered records, fictitious sales, write-offs, those are all good clues that there might be company property walking off. So those are the 3 most common types of fraud. These are a bunch of other kinds of fraud. We've got skimming, expense reimbursement, payroll fraud, check tampering, cash on hand manipulation, larceny, financial statement fraud, register theft. There's so many different ways for people to rip us off, and they are creative. The important thing is for us to educate ourselves about where the holes might be in our businesses and doing our best to plug them proactively. And sometimes just letting people know that you're watching is enough to deter them from trying. It's like having a sign for the security system outside your home. Let the potential jerks know that it's not worth the effort. Just fend them off from the start. So when it comes to fraud, some of the best ways to remember what to look for is with stories. And I have a story for you about a business. This is all one business where I worked, and there was so much fraud going on. It was crazy. I worked there for several years, and I tried to blow the whistle on numerous occasions, but the business owner hated confrontations so much that he just refused to do anything about it until after I quit. Years later, his wife got involved, and she made some things happen. I finally couldn't take the toxic work environment anymore, and I quit. But something that you can do, keep an eye out for employees that are living beyond their means, having financial difficulties, exhibiting control issues, acting unusually close with customers or vendors, displaying kind of a wheeler-dealer kind of attitude, or if they're going through a divorce or family problems, or maybe they're acting irritable, suspicious, defensive, or displaying addiction problems, those can all be good indicators of fraud. Even something as simple as refusing to take vacation can be seen as, oh, this person's really dedicated. Or it could be that they just don't want anyone sitting in their seat because that person who fills in for them might notice something. These are all signs that there might be something going on under the surface. So,
Ingrid, oh, sorry.
Go for it.
No, I'm saying that's really important. I mean, the way somebody lives is a key indicator into, their rationalization or their motivation behind, that fraud triangle. For instance, just to get onto the highway patrol, there's an extensive background check. And one of the things they key in on is your behavior, through a divorce or through any other life scenarios that could cause pressure. For instance, credit. They check your credit, and if there's already financial pressure, chances are you're not going to be hired as a police officer because they don't want you to be tempted while you're out doing the job. So, those are key indicators of motivation and rationalization as part of that opportunity when it exists.
Absolutely right. I love that we've got a cop on the call. So
it was interesting, kind of dovetail what you're saying. When we released this product, QBox, one of the first things that popped in my brain was, there's probably a lot of people out there that don't want other people seeing their books as easily as they can. And sure enough, the first few months, we had some serious firings and people that had to leave companies. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing about QBox, but it's amazing. Just like you said, when people aren't held accountable and there's not a second set of eyes that are, just business practice, you should anyways. It's not a matter of big brother, but you should always have accountability. It was amazing. We were surprised how many stories we found out later of people that once they had the accountability where someone else could readily look at their books, it flushed out some things that people didn't want to have flushed out. So.
Absolutely right. And that's so important. And that's one of the reasons why I love QBox and QuickBooks and the internal controls just there within the software, being able to see who's logging in and when, and having the controls, the user controls within QuickBooks to be able to give access only where access is needed in the books, because the employee that's just entering invoices doesn't need to know how much money is in the bank account. So being able to limit those views, so important, and that's a great resource that QBox and QuickBooks has created for us in creating tools that have internal controls. So I'm going to get into the story a little bit more. Remember, this is one business that I'm talking about. This particular business had employees when I was there that were padding their time cards by 15 minutes or more every day. And it was creating just absolutely zero accountability. But in addition to the time card padding, the bookkeeper and the sales manager were also committing various kinds of payroll fraud in collusion, padding their salaries and cashing out vacation pay that they never earned. So they were taking payroll advances and just ending up with another paycheck rather than actually making it an advance they had to pay back. They were taking advances on overtime, even though they were salaried employees. They were calling it comp time. This was not a government business. There's no comp time. What they were doing was extremely illegal. The payroll taxes weren't getting paid, and the notices were just getting hidden in a drawer, resulting in massive penalties. It took IRS intervention, which led, that's how the wife found out that there were problems, was because the IRS got involved. No matter how many times I blew the whistle on this stuff, it took the IRS getting involved to actually stop some of this. The employees were also taking what they were calling flex time, not taking their lunches and then putting their lunch time at the end of the day, which is illegal. It's against human resource law. And pitching in vacation time to give other people time off. You know, it was really strange. But the main two people, the bookkeeper and the sales manager, were taking thousands of dollars per year based on what beyond what they were salaried. And it had been going on for many years. And all of this could have been prevented if they were using a better payroll system, had oversight over the payroll reports, and if they were using T-sheets. I love T-sheets. I also love Flight, which Mike is going to be showing us in just a little bit. There are some great ways for Flight to be showing us spikes in the payroll. You know, if something is out of alignment, you know, and there's a spike, Flight will point that out to us. And Mike will show us that in just a little bit.
You know, a couple more examples of that. One happened to me, one happened to a friend of mine's company. The one that happened to me was in my hotel staffing company. We had 500 employees, but on one specific hotel, we had employees that were clocking in for each other, which means, you know, a person might not show up for an hour, but was still getting paid, not even on premises. The other one was a commission scheme where the salesperson was actually creating a fake customer where the accounting department would send them an invoice that was never paid, even though the commission was paid. So, you know, those are things, you know, that you mentioned Flight that will point out, hey, there's a new customer. So it puts more eyes on the fact that there's a new customer. Do we know them? Are they legit?
Yep, absolutely. So this top point here, all of this was able to happen because there was no oversight, and Flight helps with the oversight part. But it's also because it was a permissive environment. They had no HR policies in place, and there was a general lack of respect for the leadership in the company. So another type of fraud that is often just overlooked is use of company tools and time. Once again, it can be based on no oversight, and this is often overlooked because people aren't necessarily stealing money directly. But one example of this, at this company, there was an employee that was downloading illegal music on the company Wi-Fi, and the company actually got sued for it. So that was a problem. There was also use of the company postage and UPS system without paying the company back because there was no monitoring on that. And the sales manager was gambling on the company's computers during company time and stealing company time and use of its resources to enable her gambling habit. So all of those things were able to happen because there was just no oversight. No one was watching. No one really cared what the employees were doing with their time. In addition to that, employees would use their company cards for personal purchases, knowing that there was no oversight. They would do supply runs at Costco and purchase personal things at Costco, and they knew that the receipts were just not going to be checked. At one point, the sales manager purchased a diamond ring on her company card and never reimbursed the company for it. In addition to that, the bookkeeper's husband was the handyman for the business, so they were regularly cutting checks to the handyman's business for work that was never performed. She was assigned on the account, so there was no oversight over any of that. And it was totally a corporate culture of sick and wrong that encouraged people to be awful. And we have up here just a handful of apps that can help prevent some of these things. Bill.com, Expensify, PexCard, Receipt Bank are all tools that we can use to have better capturing and make sure that there's documents to support purchases, to ensure that receipts actually get looked at, to ensure that the things that people said they were purchasing are the things that got purchased. The Costco run situation is unfortunately very common with employees that run errands on behalf of the business. This company also had data theft, where employees would use company privilege information for personal purposes, including when an employee left the company and took the company's entire customer contact list with them. He then set up a competing business and solicited many of the company's clients and totally got away with it. Nothing ever happened to him. So just having pieces in place where people know, hey, if you pull that kind of thing, we will pursue, litigation. That we're not going to just let it go. All of those stories happened in one business, and it could have been prevented if the business owner would have just been willing to do something about it. It is all about corporate culture. He created an environment that was just rife with these sorts of things because, frankly, that's the kind of person he was. Whereas having a good corporate culture is like having a healthy body with a good immune system. And the occasional germ is going to have a harder time getting in and having an impact. And even if you do get sick, you'll be able to fight it off more easily. We need to have a see something, say something policy that encourages our employees to speak up if they see something that's off. And even just a situation where that's not how people do things here. It's just not how it goes. And make sure that there is a zero tolerance policy. And keeping in mind that trust is not an internal control. Of course, we want to trust the people around us, but you need to trust and also verify. Honest people appreciate transparency, and that especially goes for our accounting professionals. All of the accountants in this room love to be transparent with their clients and educate their clients on how to have good internal controls. And that means not accepting signer privileges on our clients' bank accounts. That means getting only read-only access to our clients' bank accounts, not taking their usernames and passwords, not getting their PIN numbers for cards. All of those pieces need to be in place to make sure that the rabbit's not in charge of the lettuce. That's an important piece.
Yeah, I love that statement. Trust is not internal control. I mean, even the CEO of Finagraph, he has his expense report reviewed. So that just that's just one of those extra steps that he goes to make sure that there's full transparency in what he's doing.
Absolutely right. Well, and one thing that I love about Flight that you'll be poking at in just a moment also is how it can point out gaps in check sequence. Little things like that. That's a fantastic tool. So once again, fraud triangle, we don't have control over people's perceived motivations, but we can decrease their rationalization by having good culture in our businesses, and we can eliminate the opportunity with internal controls. So the question is, are the choices within our small businesses working for us? Our business problems are our personal problems in disguise. And we need to get support with these things in our small businesses from our accounting professionals. And that is a big part of the relationships that Joe was just talking about that we're teaching at Scaling New Heights and other fantastic conferences. The data is important for finding the gaps and having issues. Encouraging the proper corporate culture and encouraging good boundaries, that comes down to relationships with our clients, and that's so important. So taking responsibility and asking the right questions, and it's starting with a good mindset and recognizing that just compliance, bookkeeping, and accounting services at this point, having reactive relief, aren't the best solutions for fraud because it's already happened. We have to have sustainable habits for growth that have proactive prevention in place for fraud. So before we hop into Mike and Flight, these are just a few things that you can get some more information. I've got educational videos and blogs at polymath.com, and also askabookkeeper.com if you want to see Mike and I talking about fraud prevention with a puppet just earlier this month. That shows on our YouTube channel. And there's other great fun educational videos. And you can also join our Facebook discussion forum. Visit askabookkeeper.com and click on the link for Facebook to join us in there. We'd love to continue these discussions, and these educational resources are free. For the accounting professionals in the room, you can also check out polymath.com/accountant education for the educational resources that we have specifically for our fellow accounting professionals. So that's my quick and dirty presentation on fraud. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Mike has for us, and seeing how Flight can help us to see some of these things more deeply.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ingrid. Mike, the floor is now yours.
Floor is now mine. Okay, hey, can you see?
Yes, we can.
Flight, is it up? Oh, good. Hey, you know what I thought was really interesting about, when you started this whole thing off, you shared stories from, from your local, from Ashland or from Southern Oregon. I looked at the numbers, right? 140,000, 100,000, 130. I mean, these are large numbers, and that's a culture of, like you said, permissiveness, where you just allow people to do it because you're not seeing the whole picture. One of the things that we've tried to build into Flight is to know faster, act sooner, avoid failure, right? Those are the three things that we try to do. And we do that through, looking for the anomalies, looking for those gaps like we're talking about, looking for unexpected bills. We're not saying that this is wrong, but we're pointing it to you as it happens because, I've built 10 companies, Ingrid and Chris, and I tell you, I get so wrapped up in the day-to-day of helping my customers, of building great products, that sometimes I don't look at the little details like, oh my gosh, we usually pay $225 in the gas bill. It was $790 this month. What happened? Did I have a bunch of my employees go fill up their family's cars? At least it gives me the indication to look, right? So that's what we're trying to do, is say, hey, listen, this doesn't look right. Data is where we're at. Now, I like that Joe points to us for data analytics, but it isn't just financial, right? I mean, it's your human resources data. It's your customer, your vendor data. There's even tools out there to analyze, your internal communications. And this is pointing out rationale, motivation, and opportunity. For instance, if you have customers with the same address as an employee, well, that should give you a clue. I mean, are they buying our stuff? Right? And sometimes you'll see stuff like that. Or there'll be incomplete profiles. It's those things where you're like going, wait a second, we always fill out a phone number or a physical address. Why are we missing these things? So that's what we're going to be doing, is looking for ways to indicate that this is a break in your internal control, right? I mean, would you agree, Ingrid? Oh, you're muted, sorry.
Absolutely right, I agree.
All right, so when you look at Flight as a way to help you with fraud prevention, it's just that. This is a mobile app. It's you're seeing the desktop version here, but imagine getting the push notifications that you got a new customer or you got a new vendor, especially if you didn't expect it. Like myself, I travel quite a bit, so it's always interesting for me to see we've got a new vendor, and sometimes I want to ask that question. Why do we have a new vendor? Why did we change from the old one? Or are they doing something similar? Because that could indicate that somebody's doing something right now, and I don't give them 5 checks and $140,000 before I find out that this vendor doesn't exist. I know as it happens. So I think that's what we're trying to do, is get people to know things faster. What I wanted to do, Chris, if you don't mind, just kind of show people what we're trying to do with this. A lot of people that know Finagraph from the last 5 years in the accounting space know us as a dashboard, right? Because we're a banking platform and we do high efficiency lending for, over 100 banks across the country. But what we're trying to do is put the knowledge of the investor or the banker in the hands of the individual. And that's what the dashboard was designed to do. What we realized is that was probably the wrong approach. I mean, small business owners, as much as they love numbers, as much as they think they love ratios, they just don't use them, right? They like to do their job. They like to build their business. But what we want to do is put these little things that are dumb, and I say dumb because I did them too, in the hand sooner. So something doesn't just, stay on the calendar or stay in my checkbook forever and ever and ever. The way we do that is by two features. One is the cash activity feed. These are transactions that are happening. And if you notice, it has a similar look and feel to a Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. So imagine instead of a wall of numbers, instead of a big wall and big charts and graphs and things like that, these are individual little cards, snippets of information, bite-sized chunks of this is important. Look at me now. We're not going to waste your time. We're not going to put a lot of, our terminology internal is give them high signal, no noise, or low noise. So it's just the things that are important, not all the other noise that happens around your business. The other portion, and I have to move people's faces to see it, is the cash flow calendar, right? So it is a cash flow calendar. So we've got a cash activity feed, and then we have a cash flow calendar. Now, people on this call may have seen cash flow tools, across the internet that say that they're going to predict your cash, right? When I say you're going to know faster, you want to know if money's leaking out or if you're going to run out faster. So we built a cash flow calendar that is different than anything else in the market. First of all, it's the only mobile app, on the market in Apple Store and Google. But what we don't do is what the typical cash flow forecasting or modeling does, which is take the invoice date and then the due date and say that's when the money's coming in. Because I think Chris, as well as I do, just because I tell you net 30, chances are you're not going to pay me in net 30. you might pay in 20, you might pay in 20, you might pay in 50. I don't know. But each individual, each individual customer has their own payment behavior pattern. So what we do is we have built an algorithm that analyzes the payment behavior of everybody in your file. How are they paying? We look for patterns, not just they pay in 22 days. It's, oh my God, this is every second Tuesday. That's when they must sit down at their desk and write all their bills. So we're going to tell you, as close as possible. And Seth David, gave me the best compliment last week I've heard about the cash flow calendar, because he has one that he does in Excel, and he says, I'm going to go through and do my business, in Excel. Then I'm going to use the cash flow calendar and see whether prediction changes. Well, he did his, and it took him about 20 minutes or so. Then he did ours, took him about 40 seconds. And they were 3 days apart of when he was going to run out of money. So we think that's pretty good, right? I think that's pretty good because he knew exactly when something was going to happen. We're trying to predict it, so he was able to say, I'm going to pay this bill on Friday, where we said, well, you might pay it Thursday. So we were like 3 days off in the total amount that he'll run out. But the cash flow calendar, again, analyzes the payment behavior of your customers and you, right? So we're going to look at when you pay your bills. And say, we think that you typically pay your Comcast bill on the 15th, and we'll be able to see that in the past history. And this is what Joe was talking about. This is the machine learning. This is the cognitive learning that computer companies are doing, software companies like me. We are using artificial intelligence to build a predictive model of what's going to happen next. So that's what's built into this cash flow calendar. Just to show you, it looks like a heat map. If you see that right there, it looks like a heat map. Green, the greener it is, the better your cash flow. The redder it is, the worse. So you can see in April, this company goes from, having a lot of cash to, oh my God, you're going to run out on the 13th. And if I click on the date, I'm going to show you all of the transactions that we've predicted. And if you notice, we're putting in a confidence score too, Chris, which is the more that we're confident, the more often we've seen this pattern emerge, the more confident we are. If I hover over the confidence score just like that, it says, hey, we got a 69% confidence rate that this is going to happen. Here's the date ranges. Here's the cash ranges that we analyzed. This is where we think it's most likely to fall. And as I was telling Ingrid last night, the more often you use or the longer you use Flight, the smarter it becomes about you and your customers, right? And that's just how artificial intelligence and machine learning works, is that they start to pick up on patterns of how the business is. Now, what we can alert you to is this doesn't look right. This person is doing something different, right? We've never seen this customer before, so we're going to alert you to this is a new customer. Or this is a new vendor. We're going to alert you to things that just don't look right to us. And not saying that's right or wrong or that there's fraud being committed. It's just, did you see this? Is more what we're looking for. So when we're coming down through the activity feed, we're going to tell you when your bills are overdue. And if you notice, we've got a commenting section that looks a lot like Facebook. So I can alert my team immediately. So when we're saying, I'm saying, here's a new vendor, and I'm on the road, I can actually type back instantly when I see that and say, hey, who's this new vendor? I don't have to wait till the end of the month to see, a cash report. I don't have to wait till I'm signing a check. I can see it as it happens. So, Ingrid, you had an interesting use case for some of this. What do you think you were going to do?
Well, I just love that, in the case of new vendors and things, once you get the push notifications together so that it's, on our phone, we can see these things in real time happening within our clients' books, and it'll notify us, which helps us to offer better advisory services to our clients. I also love, right now we're looking at a single business, but if you go back out to the main, the bigger flight screen that shows all the businesses, it shows us a side-by-side view of the client's cash flow calendars. And in mine, it shows actually 2 wide, so you can see March and April side by side. And I know that just glancing at March and April, if I see any pink, that's something that I can talk to my client about more than a month in advance and say, hey, let's see if we can navigate these waters together before you run out of money. Wouldn't that be nice?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Especially if there is a cash leakage, where we're talking about payments to fraudulent vendors and those type of things, because we're going to predict it too. If it's become a pattern, you're going to see it, and we're going to predict another payment. So you'll have plenty of opportunities to see it happening in your business as it's happening. But yeah, I love just seeing the 2 month out, 3 month out, and those type of things. Let's see, back to the activity feed. As you're going down through again, I like how you brought up the push notifications. They're already in the Android version. And I don't know why it takes Apple, but it always takes Apple just a little bit longer to approve things. So they're coming out very soon on the iPhone as well. But it is, this app is already in the Apple Store, App Store. The other thing we built in is this Mark score into Flight. If you don't know what Mark score is, it's Moody's Analytics Risk Quality Score. And if you've heard of FICO, FICO's for you, right? It's for the person. This Mark score is what the bank's built to evaluate the company, the business itself. It's the health, right? So, when a bank's going to look at you, if you want to get a loan, they're going to look at both. Does the business generate cash? Is it healthy? Or, does the person also, does he have the propensity to pay, meaning can he pay and will he pay? And so it's always interesting to see that. And then again, the Mark score, it gives you what's helping. It's kind of like a Credit Karma. If you go to markscore.com, Credit Karma for your business. Other thing is, we're going to tell you everything we've checked for, but I like the new vendors. I like the new customers, and days cash on hand, which I like to call days to bankruptcy. So this is what you're, when you might die, which we don't want you to do. So you should have, at least 45 days or more of cash is kind of what, our suggestions are. So good. I think we got about 10 minutes left. I think since you're on the phone or on the call, Ingrid, if anybody wants to try Flight, they can go to getflight.com and just press the try now. And Ingrid has a promo code that gives you a discount, right, for the product. So
thanks, Mike.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's $19 regularly a month, but with Ingrid's promo code Penny, Penny, you actually get it for $14 a month, just because you know Ingrid. Okay. Another thing outside of just fraud, this unexpected bills is one that's really important. That's why I keep going back to this. I had an accountant call me about a month ago now, and they just saw their water bill go from $125 to almost $175 a month. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot, but if you do that over 3, 4, 5 months, it adds up. It's just money leaking out of your company. Mm-hmm. And although they couldn't, pinpoint, they go, I don't know why it spiked. They didn't leave the water on. They couldn't find a leak inside the property. And they were in Seattle, so, it rains quite a bit up there. But on the far back corner, on their side of the meter, there was actually a water leak in the grounds. So I mean, they were able to find it sooner. Whereas they might not have found it until it dried up in Seattle, which is never. And that so that 175, they might have just paid the 175, and all the leakage that was coming out for months and months and months. But by alerting them to the difference, the anomaly, which is again helps prevent fraud, but also helps you prevent money leakage, it saved them possibly thousands of dollars per year.
Hey, Mike, I want to draw your attention to the chat. Gina Faust had a great question. She wants to know if Flight can do tracking by class.
Coming. It doesn't yet, but what we've done is sometimes you got to have sample data to be able to build the feature. So we just added class tracking in our own company. And what, I think what James is trying to do is be transparent about it. So he's saying when we build it in, we analyze our own QuickBooks file, and he'll be able to build class tracking into to Flight. And maybe it'll be a separate business feed, or maybe it'll be a separate alert. But yeah,
Fantastic.
Class tracking will be coming.
She sent you her email address, and she would love for you to keep her posted because it's for rentals and flipping property. Gina, I'm right there with you, actually. A lot of our clients use class tracking because our niche specialty at Polymath is in cultural and adventure tour companies. So we work with our clients and use class tracking to separate out their income and expenses by tour. So being able to get a glimpse of how things are going for different tours. Kristen wants to know if Flight is Canadian friendly.
It is, mainly because we're looking at cash transactions in and out. That's agnostic. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're in Australia, India, Canada. Now, the next feature will have some impact on Canada, which is when we take some of the important things off the Finagraph dashboard, like benchmarking, we've got to build in the postal code system a little bit better into Flight to be able to match industries and regions a little bit better. So that's something that we're working on, but we're not doing any industry comparison now. So it's just looking at cash transactions, which it doesn't matter where you are in the world, that still works.
What's the, I had a question. What is that? How does it interface with the QuickBooks file itself? How is it extracting data? You install it alongside it, and it has its own API that's pulling the data to populate all of the alerts and such? Or?
Currently, we use ClickOnce technology that's built into most every browser. Or we've got what's called in Google, we've got the financial link. It's just an add-on in the browser. That way, we use the SDK and connect and pull that out. What will be released this month is live refresh. So if you use a QBO, we'll be able to read it in real time as it's happening.
That's for QBO. What about for desktop?
QBO on the live remote stuff, on the live connection, we'll be able to schedule it. All right, schedule it means once a day at 3 o'clock in the morning. You just have to make sure the QuickBooks desktop file is open. That's the biggest challenge is having it open already. To be able to connect to it. So if the file is open, we'll be able to connect to it and pull data.
Yeah. I know that most of the people... Oh, sorry. I was just saying...
we're not going to be in charge. Yeah.
Go for it.
I'm just saying we're not going to be in charge of when you want the analysis or you want to refresh your data. That's something you'll either schedule or you'll click on. So, you'll be in charge of when that happens. We're not Big Brother just tapping into your system.
Right. I know that most of the people on this call are focused on the desktop side of things, so wanting to make sure that they're getting the information that they want for desktop QuickBooks.
Yeah, this works for everything. It's just that the live refresh will be a better experience with QBO just because of the way it's set up, in the cloud.
Okay. Well, I think that's been the case with a number of vendors, actually, because it used to be you could use Intuit's interface to sync to or communicate at all with the closed file, and that's now changed. So our product, for example, we have our own API, but the file has to be running. There's just no two ways about it. And I remember 3 or 4 years ago, there was a handful that were still interacting with a closed file, but I think they're just gone now. So like you're describing, the file has to be active. They have to initiate some sort of communication, which when you're in desktop, it's not a big deal because most cases they have the file open for some indeterminate amount of the day anyway. So like you said, they just have to schedule that time. It's most commonly going to be when the file's activated to initiate that process.
And this is probably the wrong format, but I would like to talk to you about Qbox.
Okay.
And just just learn more about it.
Okay. We can schedule that appointment.
There you go. There you go. So good. Yeah. Again, I was just going to pull up GetFlight so people know what it is. It is the cash flow tool. So getflight.com. And
posted
again,
the link in
now
the
is the
chat
best way to
also.
do that. Okay. Good. So
We'll
yeah, you
also
can
make
just
sure to
press
include-
try now. So, okay, so that's kind of what I had. I really appreciate you coming in, and great introduction. I don't know if I wrote that or somebody else did, but I learn something about myself every time somebody says it.
That's why I put the caveat that I don't write those, so you got some heavy credentials there, man. But thank you very much, and we also will include the information regarding this particular GetFlight site in the follow-up email we'll send to everyone that's registered as part of Desktop Time. But thank you very much. See, we haven't had a huge amount of questions so far, but that only means you did an excellent job. That's what that means. So if anybody has any questions after today, we'll of course have both Ingrid and Mike's information on our website. So if you'd like to reach them after the fact, you can send them a message, or you can reach out to them directly if you're already familiar with either their practices. Thank you very much both for joining us today. Thank you for that excellent demo of Finagraph and Flight. And Ingrid, thank you very much for joining us today. There's someone flashing here. Great webinar, Ingrid and Mike from Gina. So thank you both very much for joining us. We appreciate your time, appreciate the introduction. And again, if you have any other questions, if you want to figure out how to get a hold of either of them or get in touch with Finagraph, that information will be available on our website. We're getting close to the ending time here. Did want to at least mention and invite you back next month. I know everyone's kind of in the throes of tax season. That's why we know people are going to watch the recorded version, and we'll make sure you know that that's available on the website as well. Next month, we do have Joanne Del Balso joining us, who's back. She was here last year as a guest host, and we also will have HubDoc. I'm not sure if it's going to be Jamie yet, but Jamie did join us last year also. So please come back next month and join us. I don't know the date right off the top of my head, but usually I'm better about that. But keep track of the notifications we send you. I'm going to tell you April 18th, so which is our usual third Wednesday of the month, 1 o'clock Pacific time. We'll be back here. Thank you very much again, Ingrid and Mike, for joining us, and thank you to Joe also, who isn't with us anymore. But we really appreciate your time, and again, thank you to all of you for joining us. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule during this tax season. Or see, last year I got harassed because I said March Madness, and Allison said, "What the heck is March Madness?" And if you know March Madness, it's pretty addicting, and although there's been a lot, excuse me, a lot of upsets already this year, so I think most of us, our brackets are out the window. Anyways, thank you very much again for joining us. We'll look forward to seeing you next month. And again, if you have any other questions, please visit our website. You can find information today about our guest host and our guest vendor. Thank you very much again. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.